applause until I'm done. But yeah, it is really good to be here this morning. My name is Nathan, like he said. I'm not a pastor here, but I do appreciate the opportunity to speak on Sunday morning. So we are continuing our study in 2 Corinthians. We're in chapter 5, as we read earlier, so I don't feel like I need to read through that again. Hopefully you remember that well enough. It's chapter 5, verses 1 through 10. So today, I kind of broke down the passage into what I think is kind of the key message that this passage is giving us. And I think it's the coming hope of the resurrection gives us the ability to endure suffering as we strive to please the one who will judge us. So actually, we're actually going to take a step back. And sorry, Pastor John, I'm not trying to step on your toes, but we're going to run through chapter 4 real quick because I think chapter 4 is really important to lead up into chapter 5. So the first verse is, oh well, we'll get to it. There it is. So the first verse is up there on the screen, but it flows right out of the preceding chapter. When it says, like, for we know, it's kind of pulling from that last chapter into what we see there. So the next, the verses right before it are, therefore we do not despair, but even if our physical body is wearing away, our inner person is being renewed day by day. For our momentary light suffering is producing for us an eternal weight of glory far beyond all comparison, because we are not looking at what we can be seen, but looking at what cannot be seen. For what can be seen is temporary, but what cannot be seen is eternal. So because of this, we can't read this section in isolation from what came before. So in chapter 4, Paul spoke of them carrying around this great treasure in jars of clay. Pastor John did a really good job of that last week. And meaning that the power of God should be seen and celebrated in rather than anyone doing the work ourselves. It's not what we do, it's what God has done in us that is the reason that it should be celebrated. Verses 8 through 10 then, he says that we are experiencing trouble, are persecuted, are knocked down, we're not crushed, we're not abandoned or destroyed. But they carry the death of Jesus in their bodies, making it seen to the world around them. They can do this because they know that the one who raised Jesus from the dead will raise them up as well. And he will bring them into his presence. It's not that they're just going to be raised, they're actually going to be with Christ. So that leads right into this right here, so 14, 6 through 18. And then that leads right into 5:1. So in 5:1 it says, for we know that our temporary house if our temporary house is destroyed, we have a building from God, a house not made with human hands, eternal in the heavens. So in this verse, Paul contrasts the body that we have right now with the body that will come in the future. He compares the body that we have now to a tent, something that's really temporary. A lot of times, well, in the first century, living in a tent was a little more common than it is today. But even today, when we go in a tent, we set it up, we go camping for a couple days, week at most normally, and then you take it down and you go back to your house where you actually live. And it seems that Paul's using this illustration. He's a tent maker. He knows how tents work. And so he's using this illustration of a tent that is a temporary place. It's not somewhere we're going to be for a long time. So when we experience death, that tent is then destroyed. And Paul says that we have a building. It's not a dwelling, something far more permanent. It's not the same as what we have right now, but it is similar. It's not something completely different. You live in a tent. A lot of tents, they have the rooms set up. You kind of have almost like a little house. It's similar, but it's not the same. And this house is kept for us in heaven. It's eternal in the heavens. A lot of times when we read this verse, we think, oh, that means that our eternity is spent in heaven. And I don't think that's actually what this verse is getting at. So let's say I invited you over to my house. It's not very big, but we'll all pack in there. And I say, great, y'all are coming over. I have some ice cream for you in the freezer. Do you expect to have to get into the freezer to go get the ice cream? No, it's in the freezer, and I will bring it out for you. I think in the same way, these eternal bodies, these permanent bodies are for us, stored up in heaven. And when Christ returns, we get them, and we live eternal on a remade, renewed earth. It's not we go up and float around in heaven, but we actually live on a physical earth in these new bodies. So Paul views this destruction, he views death here as a likelihood but not a certainty. In Paul's other main examination of the resurrection body, we have to go back to 1 Corinthians for that. That would be in 1 Corinthians 15. He seems to focus somewhat more on the idea of being alive when Christ returns. Here, he's almost focusing more on what happens if we die before the return of Christ. In 1 Corinthians, it's more of what it looks like if we are still alive. So it says in 51, "Listen, I will tell you a mystery. We will not all sleep." In Paul's language, that's die, generally. "But we will all be changed. In the moment, in the blinking of an eye, at the last trumpet. For the trumpet will sound, and the dead will be raised imperishable, and we will be changed. For this perishable body must put on the imperishable, and this mortal body must be put on immortality." Sounds a lot like what he's saying in 2 Corinthians 5. He seems to kind of have to reiterate to the Corinthians, no, hold on, this is the way it is. So that's verse 1. So verse 2, it gets a little odd to some extent. He kind of flips his metaphors in this section from buildings to clothing. He says, "For in this earthly house we groan because we desire to put on our heavenly dwelling. If indeed after we put on our heavenly house, we will not be found naked. For we groan while we are in this tent, since we are weighed down, because we do not want to be unclothed, but clothed, that was mortal may be swallowed up by life." So he speaks of us as groaning in this present house, as we await the building that we will receive from heaven. We're going to be bouncing around a lot of Paul today. I think almost in 2 Corinthians 5, he seems to combine a lot of what he says in other passages. So we're gonna pull from others because I think there's a lot of connections. So another area that Paul is speaking of us groaning, you can find in Romans 8. So in Romans 8, he says, "For I consider that our present sufferings cannot even be compared to the coming glory that will be revealed to us," which sounds a lot like 2 Corinthians chapter 4. "For the creation eagerly waits for the revelation of the sons of God. For the creation was subjected to futility, not willingly, but because of God who subjected it, in hope that the creation itself will also be set free from the bondage of decay into the glorious freedom of God's children. For we know that the whole creation groans and suffers together until now." So we groan in this life because we're experiencing the suffering of this life. A lot of us have experienced suffering. We experience financial problems. That's suffering. It may not be the suffering that other people in other parts of the world are experiencing, but it is suffering. We experience broken relationships. That's the suffering that comes from living in a fallen, broken world. The loss of loved ones. This passage is really pertinent to that. These are things that cause us to groan in this life. In both Romans and 2 Corinthians, Paul emphasizes that this suffering isn't, we shouldn't compare it. It's incomparable to what will come. When you look at how much groaning we do and how much joy we'll receive, the joy far outweighs the groaning. But it doesn't mean that the groaning isn't real. A lot of times we seem to use that analogy, and it almost is to kind of put the suffering, put the groaning over here. It's like, it doesn't even matter. It's not real. And yes, in comparison, it's far less, but it is still very real to us today. The groaning that Paul seems to be talking about isn't just a, woe is me, everything is bad, everything is going wrong for me today. It's more of an expectant. It is groaning, knowing that there is something far better coming for us. So, verses 3 and 4, again, kind of seem to get a little odd when you first read them. We'll go back to that. So, in verse 3, "If indeed, after we have put on our heavenly house, we will not be found naked." what is Paul going on about right here? It seems whenever we, especially in our modern world, when we think of nakedness, we think of shame primarily. I don't think, and I think in other passages Paul's talking about that. I don't think he's talking about that in this passage. So I think what he's talking about here is almost that we have our present physical body, we will get our resurrected body whenever Christ returns. But if we die before Christ returns, we're in this period of waiting. And that is the time he describes as being naked. It's just a weird thing. It's unnatural for humans to not have a body. I think Paul is saying that he doesn't want that, and so he's going through this. He says, for we groan while we're in this tent, because we don't want to be unclothed. We're weighed down with the burdens of this life, because we do not want to be unclothed, but clothed. So what is mortal may be swallowed up in life. He actually used the language of being burdened earlier in 2 Corinthians, where he says that, for we do not want to be unaware, brothers and sisters, regarding the affliction that happened to us in the province of Asia. You'd have to go back to 1 Corinthians if you want to kind of get some of the context. That we were burdened excessively beyond our strength, so that we despaired of even living. He's bringing back this idea of being burdened, that we groan because of this burden. So, like I said, it's a very Jewish idea, honestly, that Paul is looking at despairing of having a body at some point. A lot of us have this idea of, this material world is all this very, material stuff is broken, it's all nasty, it's gross, whatever you want to call it. And what we really need to do is we need to get out of this materiality into just being a spiritual being. And I think that's a very Greek idea. It's something that was floating around a lot in Paul's time, and he's pushing back against that, showing, no, our bodies are good. They're broken. We see that in the very beginning of the Bible. We see that God created material things good. They're just broken, but that he will redeem them in the end. So it's not the materiality that's the bad part. It's the brokenness within the material that's bad. So he's not wanting to escape out of materiality, but he's wanting to get a better material. I was thinking about trying to use an illustration, a physical illustration. I was going to put on a second shirt, and I was going to try to take off. Sometimes if you're trying to change clothes somewhere that you don't really have a private area, you want to put on your clothes and then you take off other clothes from underneath. I figured with all this, it'd be kind of hard to do that. But I think that's kind of the illustration that Paul is looking at. He's wanting to put on the new body before he takes off the old. He's wanting to go through without that period of time between having a body. And so this is all kind of leading forward. There's a lot of Paul's explaining a lot of stuff, and then he gets to the end where it actually okay, so what do you do now? So we're as you walk through this passage, there's kind of a divide. 1 through 4 kind of divides up, and then 1 through 5, and then 5 is kind of the hinge point, is what I'm trying to get at. So in verse 5, we find out, now the one who prepared us for this very purpose is God, who gave us the Spirit as a down payment, this purpose of being clothed with a new body, this purpose of having this heavenly body. And so it kind of ends the first half, but then it also looks forward to this second half. It's God who prepared us, and the fact that he prepared us, it's something that's already happened. This is not something that he's necessarily going to do in the future, but he prepared it for us, and it has implications for what comes. It has impact on our life today, even though it has already happened. So when you get to the last part, it's who gave us the Spirit as a down payment. Most of us who've lived any length of time, been an adult, you've made a big purchase. You kind of know how a down payment works. You're making a big purchase, and you have to put down some money, something, before you pay the rest of it off. You have access to it, but you don't have it. You don't fully own it. There's a similar way that this works, is that God has given us his Spirit. It's the down payment. It is obviously, people a lot of times today will make a down payment and they won't finish paying it off. God's not like that. He faithfully pays off whatever he owed. It's a weird thing of God owing something. But it's almost a pledge. It's saying, I've given you this, which means you will get all. And what he's saying in here is that God has given us a spirit as a down payment. We're going to get these resurrected bodies because I already have the spirit. He actually, this is the second time he's referenced this idea in 2 Corinthians. When you go back to chapter 1 again, it says, but it is God who established us together with you in Christ and who anointed us, who also sealed us and gave us the Spirit in our hearts as a down payment. And so God has said, this is sure. I have given my down payment. The full payment will come. And so as you move on through the passage, you get to this back and forth that Paul seems to be having, that he wants, that there's absence from the body, there's present with the Lord. And so we'll kind of get into that. So in verse 6, it says, therefore we are always full of courage, and we know that as long as we're alive here on earth, we are absent from the Lord. Now, this is not a relational absence from God. It is not that while we are still in this physical body, we are not in relation with God. That's not what he's saying. But it seems to be a more nearness in location rather than a nearness in relationship. He's longing to be near God or near Christ, same thing. But he is saying that we're in this current body. And he has already kind of made that, there's a lot going on in this passage because he's already kind of made that divide of, I don't want to not be clothed, but I want to be with Christ. And so you'll see there's kind of a struggle within Paul of what he really would like to be in this case. So, and then in verse 7 kind of interrupts. It's almost, have you ever had that thing where you're giving a sentence, and then you kind of interrupt yourself real quick, and then you get back on track? I think that's what Paul almost does in this letter. Because in verse 7, he goes to, for we live by faith and not by sight. And then he almost starts back again, thus we are full of courage and would prefer to be away from the body at home with the Lord. So verse 7, I think, is one of the kind of the key verses in this passage. Paul didn't know that he would receive the resurrection body because of his good works. He didn't know that he would receive the resurrected body because he'd already seen it. He is still in this present body. He's still apart from the Lord in a location aspect. And so he has to walk by faith rather than by sight. A number of years ago, I got the chance to work at a summer camp. This was like 11 years ago at this point. We were the cleaning staff, we were the kitchen staff, we were the people who did all the events, all the stuff. It was a lot of work, but it was a lot of fun. And one of my favorite things to do was on the ropes course. This is a picture of me that I used to work the zip line a lot. But one of the areas I got to work was something called the power pole, which, if you can see that, it's basically where you have a telephone pole that's about 20 feet high. It has some steps on it. And then you have a couple other sets of poles, and there's a trapeze bar hanging from that other set of poles. And the goal in this is that you have to climb up the pole, stand on top, and jump for the bar. You are tied in. You're also tied in to a person. It's not like a machine. So you're relying on this person who is down, who's trained, by the way. But they're down on the ground to catch you if you fall. And that was an area that I got to work. But before you work it, they want you to do it. Because they don't want you not knowing what it's like to be up there, and then you're trying to encourage someone to do it. Because a lot of what ropes course is just trying to get people to work through their fears. So I climbed up this pole. It's really easy to climb up to the top. It's really, really hard to stand up. Honestly, I think that one of the guys who was in charge told us, the trapeze bar is just to get you down. The hardest part is standing up. Because you have nothing to hold on to, and you're just on this, about an 8-inch pole, and you're trying to just stand up with nothing to hold on to. It's a weird feeling. And so I get to the top, I stand up. You're just you have to like stand up and then like rotate yourself around because you climbed up backwards, and so you have to like spin around in a circle. And then you just stand there and you jump they count you down and you jump for the bar. And so they counted me down, and I jumped, and I caught the bar, and my hand slipped. And I fell, but I didn't fall that far because the person who was on the other end of the rope caught me. You may be wondering, what does this have to do with walking by faith? So when I jumped off the pole, you might say I took a leap of faith. And to be honest, I didn't have faith that I would catch the bar. It's actually pretty hard. It's pretty easy to get to the bar. The jerk of like when you catch something and your body weight falls, I was a little bit lighter then. But it yanks you off, and it's really hard to hold on, especially when you're nervous, you're sweating. So it's really hard. I didn't have faith that I was going to catch the bar. But I had faith in the person that was going to catch me. And I didn't have a down payment. I didn't have this pledge, this assurance. He could have told me all he wanted. It wouldn't have been an assurance. But he caught me, and I trusted that he would catch me. And I think that's kind of almost what Paul is saying, is that he's not trusting in himself. He does not have faith that he would attain eternal life, that he would attain this resurrected body. He has faith that God would bring it to him. And this faith isn't just because of, it is because he trusts God, but it's also because he has a down payment of the Spirit. He has already received an assurance, not just a statement of assurance, but an actual assurance that God would finish what he had started. He's already received in part what he would later receive in whole. So he still goes on. We'll get there in a second. In verse 8, he kind of picks up verse 6 again. He repeats some of the statements he made, but he again repeats, we're confident. We are full of courage. We are assured. But he also makes his preference known. In this one, he actually says, I would rather be with the Lord than be in the body. It's kind of this weird scale of he would rather be in the resurrected body. Ideally, resurrected body with Christ. And it kind of works down to being in this present body. We'd rather go from body to body, no gap, but having the gap is better than being in the body because it means being with the Lord. But he picks up, it's very similar to what I already showed up on the screen, which is Philippians 1. Again, when I'm reading this passage, I'm like, I know Paul uses these type of references everywhere else. But in in Philippians 1, he's kind of saying, for to me, living is Christ and dying is gain. Because living is living for Christ. Dying, he gets to be with Christ. And then he says, now if I am to go on living in the body, this means productive work for me. This means I get to keep doing stuff for y'all, writing to the Philippians. Yet I don't know which one I prefer. I feel torn between the two because I have a desire to depart and be with Christ, which is better by far. It's still, even though he doesn't want to leave the body, he wants to be with Christ. That's better than anything. But it is more vital for your sake that I remain in the body. So verses 1 through 8 kind of give this, they're kind of the lead up to what he really gets at in what he's wanting them to do almost. So in verses 9 through 10, he says, so whether we are alive or away, we make it our ambition to please him. For we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ, so that each one may be paid back according to what he has done while in the body, whether good or evil. He's covered a number of things up to this point. But in the end, he states that regardless of what he would prefer, what actually happens, whether he goes straight from body to body, whether he dies and has a time of nakedness before he gains a body again, he kind of says, whatever's out of my control doesn't matter, but what is still in my control is that we can make it our ambition to please him. So whether we are in the body or out of the body, we please him. The last verse in this kind of gives some oomph to this ambition. He says, "For we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ." There's some debate on exactly if this is all Christians, all people. There's some debate in there, and it seems kind of odd because it seems to say you'll appear before Christ and you'll be judged by your works, which is not what we've heard if we've been in church very long. This does not say that we are saved by our works. I think Paul makes that very clear elsewhere in his writing. But we are going to be judged by our works to some extent. This is also what's really interesting. The judgment seat is the word Paul uses is a very everyone would know what he was talking about this time. It's a very public spot where judgment is made at this time. We actually have several times throughout Acts that Paul is at one of these. He's being brought to them for judgment. So he knows what this is like. It's a very public thing. But he says that they'll appear and they'll receive in their body, receive according to what he has done while in the body, whether good or, I think bad is probably a better translation. So you could almost say what's worthwhile and worthless. What's good or bad, worthwhile or worthless. And so this is, again, we're going to go back to 1 Corinthians. The Corinthians seem to get some stuff, not get a lot of other things. Paul seems to really re-emphasize a lot of what he has said in 1 Corinthians. But in 1 Corinthians 3, we have this passage where he says, "According to the grace that God has given me, like a skilled master builder, I laid a foundation, but someone else builds on it. And each one must be careful how he builds. For no one can lay a foundation other than what is being laid, which is Jesus Christ." And this is kind of the main portion right here. "If anyone builds on the foundation with gold, silver, precious stones, wood, hay, or straw, each builder's work will be plainly seen. For the day of the Lord, the day that judgment comes, the day will make it clear, because it will be revealed by fire. And the fire will test what kind of work each has done. If what someone has built survives, he will receive a reward. If someone's work is burned up, he will suffer loss. He himself will be saved, but only as through fire." So it seems that what we do in this life, with the works that we do, they matter as illustrating our walk with Christ. No, we don't get saved by our works. If you leave nothing out, if you don't get anything else out of this, know that. We don't get saved by our works, but our works are an expression of our salvation. They don't gain it, they demonstrate it. And they will be used to determine our reward. I think we see that clearly here in 1 Corinthians, and we see it in 2 Corinthians, that we're judged by our works and we receive a reward in accordance with what we have done. So, how we live matters. I feel like that's a very simple thing. I hope that you already knew this, but I think sometimes it really needs to be reiterated, is that what we do in this life matters. And because we're gaining a resurrection body, it matters all the more. That this isn't just something this physicality is just what we're leaving behind and we're never going to have physical again. No, physicality is a good thing. It's the way God created us. So our works demonstrate whether we're walking by faith or by sight. Are we walking by what we see around us, by the suffering that we are experiencing? Are we walking just looking at that, or are we looking forward to this resurrection that will come? We're in the present body. Are you fixed on our hope of resurrection? Or are your eyes fixed on just the things that we are around us right now? Are you living your life aspiring to please the Lord, in the way Paul said at near the end? Or are your aspirations to please yourself? So each week at the end, we've had a chance that maybe you're saved, and maybe you're doing this really well, really well. We'll figure that out later. But maybe you don't feel like maybe you feel like I'm walking by sight. Do you want more? Do you want more, or walking by faith? Sorry, mix those up there. I'm walking by faith. I'm not focused on the things around me. I'm focused on the coming hope that I have. Good. Do you want more? Maybe you are saying, I know I'm saved, but man, I've been walking by sight recently. I've been focused on the things around me. I've been focused on the suffering that's in my life. I've been focusing on just everything, not looking at the hope that's coming. Do you want to? Or maybe you're here and you say, I don't know what this hope is you're talking about. Well, then do you want to know? So each week we've had a chance to come up to the front, and I'll pray over you. There's nothing special. There's nothing you have to sign, nothing you have to agree to. It's just, do you want more, to walk by faith more than you already are? That's all it is. So if you want to start moving up, we'll go ahead and start that. Again, nothing special in a prayer that I'm going to pray, but are you committing to walking by faith? Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this day. Thank you for the opportunity to preach your word. I know that even if I fall, you never will. I pray that those around the altar here, I pray that you will give them the ability to walk more by faith, that they will fix their hope on you, on your resurrection that you will bring. Maybe they are. Maybe they're solely focused on you. There's always more. Maybe they're falling a little bit behind. They're focused on the things going on and not looking to your hope. I pray that you will recenter their sight, their focus. Or maybe they don't know what this hope is. God, I pray that you will open their eyes to see by faith what this is. Not something that they can hold in their hand right now, but that they know that you are with them. I pray that you will help each one of us as we are walking through this life, that we will walk by faith and not by sight. I pray this all in your name.